Hi, welcome to the small shed. This week I'm actually finally making a start on doing something with the Cyclekart. See you in a minute. Now we've had about 4 months of thinking about this, planning, getting drawings sorted, organising materials, getting engines and things like that, but it's finally time, I think today, to make a start on putting metal to metal and getting this thing started. So let's go out and have a look and see what we've got. Well, I think things have finally got real. Just had a delivery which is outside, and hopefully if we open it up we'll see some starts being able to be made on the chassis. Let's just have a quick look. Dust as well. So let's have a quick look at what we've got and where I want to use it. Whether it'll work or not is a bit of a gamble, bit of an expensive gamble, but I think we'll get there. So this is the stuff I've been using all along. It's 40/40 aluminium, so named because obviously it is 40 by 40 millimeters square. You can get all sorts of fittings, brackets and things for it, end caps and everything like that, and it's very, very strong. In fact, I could probably have built the chassis rail out of that, but it just so happened that the 80mm depth of the double size stuff is exactly spot on for what I want in terms of the Austin 7. So I've got some 40/40 for frames and the like, supports for backrests, things like that, supports for the cowl, supports, these will be bits that will be coming up here, and odd chassis member, cross members and things. I've got plenty of it, but I've bought 2 more just in case. That is standard 40/80. Now the only problem with that, as you can see, is that you're getting all these grooves down the side. And that was something which I did think about long and hard. You can get, and I have bought for certain places, an aluminium insert strip that clips into that gap and makes it less obvious. But certainly along the side of the car where the chassis is, I didn't really want that. So this bit is going to be used for basically cross members where I want the full height, i.e. across the front where the spring perch is, maybe upright or maybe flat at the back of the passenger compartment. That should give the basic framing that will make the thing fairly solid, and then any other framing may well be done in 40/40, and the uprights will be bolted to the inside to support any bodywork. And again, there's a sloping back there, and supports for the engine and that, which again I'll be using the 40/40 for. For the motor itself, I've bought a piece of 120/40. That is 3 sections across. The aim of that is that the holes on the bottom of a standard Honda CX, GX, what are they, 200 engine or 160, or the clones, are at 80mm centres, which happens to be the holes where those slots are. So the motor should sit on that fairly happily, be bolted through, probably have a plate on the bottom to take that load, but that will provide a good starting point for the motor, which I can then incorporate into the rest of the framework using the same systems. So that's okay. This stuff bolts together at right angles very nicely, very securely. I've cantilevered 500mm out, 1/6-ish, and put 100 kilograms on it, and it hasn't moved more than 1 millimetre or so. So it is incredibly strong on the joints, as long as, and that's the only thing I've got to check, I don't get problems with bolts loosening. So we're going to have to go into shake-proof washers and all sorts and Loctite, but we'll get there when we get there. So to get over the problem of the rails not being smooth on the side, I looked further into the systems, and although this is all box Rex Roth range, BR range framing, I found that you could also get IR range, which is a similar sort of thing, slightly different profiles but the same basic shape. The only problem with that is they don't go up to a 10mm slot, they only go up to an 8mm slot. I don't think that'll be a problem. But what I've got with that is a section which is much more smart, in that it's got no gaps on the outside at all, and it only has 2 on the inside without any other embellishments at all. So they're going to be the 2 chassis rails that will form a sort of an A shape like that. So we'll have an 80mm section at the front, which will be where the front spring perch is based, and whatever else we need all the way down. So that's the material we're using. That's why I'm using it. It will seem a shame to paint this because it's rather nice, and there's an argument that says don't. It will certainly need an etch primer on it, being aluminium, but I'm hoping that that will get me to an aluminium frame fairly quickly, be able to bolt it up really rigidly, and what I'll do then is I will try it out by anchoring it down at one end, anchoring it down on one side, and then seeing how much deflection you get when you start standing on the opposite corner. But I'm pretty convinced it'll work okay. What I can do with that then, for the actual bits that are bolted to the rails, I've got the, I can find them, so at the back where the axle goes through, back I can bolt down to the rails. I can't use the slots in the top because if I do that the axle carrier will be at 95 degrees and it needs to be at right angles. What I'll do with that, because I'm not convinced that a relatively lightweight bolt just bolted into the top section will be enough, I'll get the correct positions marked with a plate on top and literally drill right through the section, come out the bottom with another plate on the bottom. Once I've got that axle position exactly sorted, and that will give me my back axle fixing. Front spring, as I say, will be hung off the spring perch on the front, and then we'll have to work backwards from the rear axle to getting final drive and gearboxes if I use it, and motor placements and everything else. We'll work from that. As far as the actual layout is concerned, I shall put the front together, put the known position, which is the end of the bonnet, and the start of the bonnet in, put the scuttle in, and then from then on it's all a bit of guesswork, because I'll be putting in a mock-up steering setup, steering wheel, column. That will set the seat position, and I can check my cockpit back again against the wooden formers that I've made and find out how all that works, so that we've got the minimum space that I need, but the maximum that the amount that I actually need to sit in there, which mainly mean altering the body slightly, but we'll do that when we get there. But say start, work backwards. Having done that, then that leaves me the rest of the tail, the motor, see how all that fits together, and we can try and work all the tail details out once we've got that final position for the driver. And I think that's really it so far. The aim of having the slotted aluminium as well was that I shall then make a body framework up out of, I don't know what, I'm looking at probably ash or maple. I've got some maple down there. That will bolt loosely onto the frame rail. And what you can do with these things, if I can find one, got one. I've bought some captive nuts that are M5, I think, thread, but it's not going to need a huge amount of weight or strength to hold the body on, because it'll be lightweight, sort of glass fibre, maybe aluminium, I'm not sure what yet, and timber frame. Those just go in like that, and then when you turn the nut, they actually dig in underneath the frame rail, and then as you tighten they clamp up. So that's a useful, if I got them the right way around it would help. Just put the nut in the right way. These are different. I'm in new territory with this section because I've not used it before. So the only limit really is the fact that you can't get up to a 10mm slot in it. But that, as you tighten it up now, just swings round and it locks it in place. So getting the body on and off should be a relatively simple matter if I need to. So I think we make a start by trimming the ends of the chassis rails, the 5 degrees off them. I'm not sure whether I'll need to finish that at all or not, because the cowl will come and go down across that where the in front of the suspension. So we will see, but you can get blanking plates for it, but it's not too difficult to make up something to fit in there anyway. And the beauty of the stuff is you can always thread the holes in there quite happily and put a bolt through them. So we'll go out to the shed and get our 5 degree cuts on that, measure the front distance at spring perch. I know exactly what width I'm aiming for where the cowl starts, and we can go on from there. So before I do any cutting on this, I'm just going to swap the blade. I've got an aluminium blade that I use. You can use a normal circular saw blade for cutting aluminium. It works perfectly okay, but this was purchased some while ago to cut this profile, and it seems to work well, so if I can get it to fit in. Needless to say, the machine is unplugged. That's it. Reverse thread, so that always confuses me a bit. Right, now unfortunately I haven't got enough clearance under the blade to do a vertical chop saw cut like that. So there's only about 75mm clearance instead of the 80 I need. So I'm going to have to lay it down flat and cut it that way. I shall check that out. I'll just put a gauge on the table itself. That zeroes at 0. Then we pop that onto the blade and get it to go to 85 or 95 depending on which way I go. I'll go to 85 because I think it goes better this way than the other. Just slacken off the back. 82, 83, 84, 85.6, 53210. So that will then now give me a sloping cut on the end of the material. So we're going to get the aluminium in, put the case back together to keep the chips in. Downside of all this is that it makes a hell of a mess. I don't really like mixing metal and woodworking debris together. Right, so that's got the shape that I wanted. That cuts the chassis rail off flush with the side rail, flush with the front. That should be 85 degrees. I've just put a square, a bevel, a sliding bevel on that to get that shape. And once again I'll check the levels, make sure that works about right. So we'll zero that. Okay, and then check the angle with that there. 85.2, so yeah, I'm maybe 2.2 of a degree out, but I think I can live with that. So that's pretty much where I want to be with that. I've got the two side rails cut, so I can start to put the front part of the chassis together. That width was calculated to be the right width to get me to the length I want, so I think we're okay. Right, time for an unboxing again. Some more bits arrived. Just see if we can find a knife. Let's get that one. I think these are only bolts for the cart frame and one or two other things, but I'm not honestly sure. As I was saying earlier, the problem is that you order stuff on the internet and you don't always know exactly what it was that you ordered. You forget, because sometimes it takes a long while if it's coming from China. Sometimes it arrives the next day because it's in the UK. And you don't always know what you've got. Oh yes, right. Yes, so these are basically the sorts of bolts I think I'm going to be using on the chassis. I have got to do a little bit of research to make sure that we're not doing anything totally stupid. I am using stainless bolts. Oh yes, big ones as well. And I know that they can gall up with when they're threaded into aluminium, but I shall put some thread lock on them, I think. But essentially these are, amongst other things, to go into the, not this one, but to go into the core. We'll use the thicker ones for that. Just drill and tap those out to go into there, and that will hold the side frame rails with a washer and the little 5-degree washers I've got, and the an anti-vibration, anti-undo type thing. A little bit of Loctite on them perhaps as well. So that's what the really big ones are for. they were an afterthought, and these will be perhaps engine mounting bolts, because they'll go just about through the web, through the top of the engine, and then we'll get some nuts for the bottom. That's those are M5s. They're going to be for the little threaded inserts that slide into the top rail of the chassis, which it's got a plain flush out the side. Inside there'll be a threaded insert going in that will bolt the ash or whatever I use framing of the body to the chassis. So that's what those are for. I can't remember what these were for now. 30mm, don't know. We'll get back onto those when I have a look and see what I ordered those for. But certainly we're on the way. What this means now is that I can thread these two sections here, ready to take these bolts and put them in, ready, and drill the frame rails, and that means then that we'll be making a start on actually assembling the chassis. So we're going to dig the taps and dies out. I think it's a 1.75 pitch M12, I think those. We'll get them tapped up. As ever, there's too much stuff in the shed. Should be enough room to do this. Right, I've done a bit of experimentation with taps in the end of the threads. The core screws aren't, the smaller screws anyway, aren't 12mm. So, and I can't get the large core screws to self-tap into here. So what I've found out is to drill it out first with a 10.5mm drill. Tapping size for M12 should be 10.2, but it really won't have it, so I'm just going to slightly open it out and we'll see how we get on. And then just pop the tap into a tap holder. It's only a cheap Chinese thing, but it seems to do the job. We just start and work our way down, and it's a bit awkward because you're tending to hit and miss with the corners of the hole. But as it starts to bind in, it grips, and then you can get the thread moving. And I'm hoping that with two of these, top and bottom of the rail, we should get enough purchase. Certainly seemed to grip well enough when I've just tried it doing two pieces together. But how it will react to dynamic loads, I don't know. As I say, the full pack position is, if it all starts to fall apart, is to clean all the anodizing and get it TIG welded, but I really don't want to get into that because it's not something I can do, so we'll see. clean that out. Get the tap out. Certainly, even if I haven't got the total grip around 360 degrees of the nut end, you know, of the bolt, we've got enough length, I think, on that to more than compensate when you compare it to a normal nut. And once it's in, it's as solid as a rock. So I think we can work with that. And I think at the end of the day we will have a length of thread going into the aluminium of, let's try it out and see what I've got. Something like 35 to 40 millimeters of thread going in, which, as I say, compared to a normal knot fixing, which is probably only about 10, it should give us enough strength. Time alone will tell, like many things on this. Right, now that's a sort of front of the chassis mock-up. You've got two side rails coming in, you've got the front rail across under the nose cone, and what's going to happen there, I've already cut the main side rails with a 5-degree angle on the end. I've cut these with a 5-degree angle on the end, so we've now got that flat front with a 5-degree either side splay. So I need to do a 5-degree angle on the drill going in. It needs to come out 20 millimeters from the back, but to do that I'm going to use the drill press which we've got here, and I've got to set that table at a 5-degree angle so that we can then lay the aluminium on top and get that hole drilled properly. So we'll set the table to 0, which it's 0.1, set that to 0, and then we'll undo this collar underneath with a spanner, and probably the best way is to go 5 degrees down that way, I think. Let's see what happens. So that's 5 degrees. We'll tighten that off, and then we can get the aluminium tube in here, and hopefully that slope down won't get in the way of anything down the far end. We can get it drilled. Right, well that's the first two pieces bolted together. And as I say, apart from vibration, I'm not worried at all that there isn't strength in that. Took me a couple of goes. I did get it wrong the first time round. I still managed to get the holes drilled in the wrong direction, but thankfully, because I've left it long in the first place, I've got that little bit of room to manoeuvre with. So that's the first side. We'll get the other one done and we should have ourselves an A-frame. Right, so there we are, the first steps. We now have the beginnings of an A-frame. We've got the front in where the spring perch will go, two side rails. I'll now start doing my measurements on the frame as to where the front bulkhead at the back of the cowl is, where the bulkhead is for the actual scuttle, and from then I can then start and get a piece of floor arranged to fit inside the grooves here to give me the floor, and I can get the next cross member put in roughly at the scuttle, I would think, which will be a piece of the 40/40 so that it's lower than the top rail, but we can actually then put in that first piece of timber plywood flooring, and that will give it a huge amount of rigidity anyway. Not that it isn't immensely rigid already, even with just the 4 bolts, but I think we're well on the way to getting something going. Well, it's a fairly small start, but at least we've actually started, and the frame is beginning to take shape, and it's proving that some of the thought processes that I had in the first place are validated, and it's going together okay. It'll take a week or two now to get things sorted out, but over the next week or two we'll be doing some more building, and I'll come back to it when we've got something to show you. Hope it was of interest. Look forward to seeing you again soon. We'll see you then. Bye!